research supporting this, yes.
No, but you're not talking, like you say, nobody is a victim, but you're not talking like violent crimes or anything like that. Aren't those things, they happen because of other
everybody,
people?
it's all created by consciousness. I gave this lecture to the police department. That was a stretch. I worked in the emergency department. I would see these people coming in. That was a creation of my consciousness. I was going to be there to participate in this. A police officer is experiencing the same. Nothing occurs that isn't come from consciousness in co-creation with those around us. If you put yourself into an environment where it's more like these violent things are more likely to happen, like police work or emergency department work or living in a ghetto or living in Rwanda, then you're more likely to have that experience, but you're still creating it from consciousness, as is everybody there. The human dilemma in this nutshell is basically this: I create my reality, but I reject it. I create my reality, but I refuse to accept it. I complain about what I created. That's what gets people into these endless, painful life experiences that go on and on. That's the victim consciousness, which basically says, I'm not in control of my experience, someone else is. And if you think about that perspective, it's very disempowering. Who is in control of your experience if you're not in control of your experience? That perspective, victim consciousness, basically says, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the next moment will offer. That's a fearsome way to live life. Nobody creates challenging experiences consciously. But unconsciously, we create all of our experiences, including the jumbo jet that crashes. An aggregate of all of these consciousness, unconsciously coming together at this moment. You ever wonder how a tornado will blast through a community and leave one house standing and the next door house is completely obliterated? If you were to look at the consciousness of the inhabitants of one versus the other, you would find the answer. And you would see that the change and the emotion that was brought up in the person whose house was obliterated was there to create, was created by that person. And that to accept that painful experience, to discharge the emotions, to shift the life experience, to start anew, is a healing experience for that person.
Those are challenging examples.
I know they are.
You know, and
Yeah.
it really pushes you to reaffirm whether you deny victim consciousness.
Yes. See, we're taught to be victims. I can fall on my down in the supermarket and hire an attorney to say that it was the supermarket's fault, and I can get paid for being a victim. There are people who get paid to be sick. The reality, nonetheless, these are high-level spiritual truths that signal the difference between victim and mastery. And when it comes to healing the body, they're extremely useful. Down to every possible remote example of this, we don't have to get into all of that. I don't know that we're psychologically or spiritually evolved enough to understand the complexity of how consciousness creates third-dimensional reality. So at this point, it becomes a tool that I'm going to use and see if it works for me.
So I have a question. So are you saying that if somebody's walking down the street and gets murdered, that person created that, and that everyone around, you're working in the emergency room, and that person is brought in to see if they're dead or not. But you're saying that, and there are other people around, the firemen and the policemen, all who view the same thing.
Yes.
So are you saying they all created that experience of that murder, that they made it happen, or that they are creating their reality of this situation?
Well, each person's perspective on any one experience is highly individualized.
Absolutely, okay.
But the experience that everyone witnesses is created from consciousness individually and collectively. And the person who is murdered is creating that experience.
They're creating getting murdered?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It has to apply in all situations. If you look at the unconscious content of that experience, you can find the mechanisms that create the outcome. Just like people who have any kind of illness, any kind of accident, it's basically saying that there are no accidents. What appears to be an accident is not really an accident. There are reasons for it. There are several books that are coming out more and more frequently. The latest book to look at the unconscious issues underlying these types of situations is the one written by Bernie Siegel's, Irma Siegel. She has a new book on this. Probably 4 or 5. One of the most powerful examples of this is the work of Reiki Hammer, who's curing cancer with an 85% success rate by just finding the psychological unconscious stress conflict that creates the disease. Eliminating that, and the cancer goes away.
But let's go back to the getting murdered deal. So how do you prevent your unconscious from creating you getting murdered? I mean, we're right back to the victim. If we don't know it's there.
The intense dramas that occur like that, like this guy Tilden. I saw the movie, this guy, Pat Tillman, this incredible athlete.
Right.
He goes over there to serve his country and gets his head blown up. The same principles apply. Why that happens can only come to light by inquiry into the nature of his life experience with great detail. Most people don't have any understanding of what's going on in their unconscious mind.
So how do we, that's my question, is how do we get that awareness so that we can prevent getting our head blown off?
The number one way to do that is to express feelings so they come out naturally. So you don't need drama to bring up emotion. Expressing emotions is a natural, high level, perhaps the number one tool for staying healthy. So that what David Biscott called the natural therapeutic experience, the heart is expressing emotion naturally, without blame, just expressing it. People who hold in emotions are at greater risk for these kinds of dramas. See, the balance between intellect and heart is a very important balance. Intellect alone without heart can be misguided. Science without heart can produce horrors as well as wonders. Heart without intellect is hysteria. The balance is the key thing. And when they're properly balanced, that's the truly exceptional being that touches on genius.